I really hope we're not live yet.
Oh, we're live.
Oh, it's live. Oh, no.
All right, well, back in the K-Ducks groove. I'm back in the K-Ducks groove. Oh, it's been too long, folks. But Daddy's home. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to KDUX Web Radio, broadcast live from Richland College in Dallas, Texas. We are the voice of Richland College. Views expressed on this show are our own, unless otherwise stated, and do not reflect the opinion of KDUX Web Radio, Richland College, or the DCCCD. Well, folks. This is the Philosophy Club Radio Hour, Season 7 premiere. Make some noise.
Woo.
Hey, excellence. My name is Kalen Scoggins, and please listen to everything I say and take it seriously. No. This is Professor Manzi, the faculty advisor of the Philosophy Club, or should I say the co-advisor of the Philanthropology Club. That's right, folks. Big moves being made. Big moves this semester. And that includes the convergence. That includes Philosophy Club conquering and overtaking the I'm joking. It's a beautiful partnership among, I would say, two very complementary fields of study, the philosophy and, of course, the more social scientific anthropology. And we made a club out of it. So essentially, the Anthropology Club is kind of looking for a new future faculty advisor because the fantastic, the terrific, the great Tim Sullivan, professor of anthropology, will be retiring at the end of the semester. And he's been the faculty advisor of the Anthropology Club for a very long time. So we're trying to find a way to keep that club going after this semester. And I think we have something special here, folks. I really do. Who do I have with me? Usually we do introductions first. It's been so long. Put a mic in my hand and I won't shut up. All right. Who do we got down there? Far corner.
Oh, we got...
Introduce yourself. Any shout-outs?
Hannah Watson here, communications officer.
Welcome back, Hannah.
Oh, thank you.
We finally got rid of Cameron. Here we go.
Right, exactly. No, actually, I'm Orlando. I'm the vice president of the Philosophy Club.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Uh-huh.
Welcome back. He's rising in the ranks.
Uh-huh.
What were you last semester?
Treasurer.
Treasurer, yeah. Treasurer to, that was a big, important job because we had no fundraisers.
Right, yeah.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. A commendable leader, I would say. You certainly helped guide discussion at the club meeting on Tuesday, and we'll do the requack. I don't have my bill. Dang. But we'll get into all that stuff. But yeah, continuing on, we have another return guest. Welcome back. What's your name?
So my name is Eva Gatesy.
Yes.
And I'm an art student here at Richland.
Yeah, welcome. Yes. Also, the Philosophy Club oftentimes, or just the philosophy program in general, will collaborate with the art department and love the art students. I've gotten to know some of those students, from seeing them at all these different extracurricular functions, and that includes you, Eva, and happy to have you here.
Thank you.
And who do we got to my right? Hand companion?
My name is Kalen Scoggins. I'm a professor of governments here at Richland College and longtime hanger-on, I suppose, at the Philosophy Club.
Yeah, you guys know what a barnacle is?
More like a leech,
It's me.
right?
More like a leech. Oh, damn.
No, that was hard.
Orlando, throwing shade.
Already.
Oh, but we don't like the shade. We like the lights. We like to see things clearly, folks. And as I
Also, we're in
said,
Dallas, so
It's a little too hot outside with the sun.
I would
don't
actually
know.
prefer
I like the shade. Yeah.
me too.
shade would be nice.
That's true. We are very shady. Yes, so we're back, folks. What's the date today? September 12th?
12th, yeah.
September 12th. Shout out to my oldest friend, James Merrill. I think it's his birthday today. Yeah. One of those things.
birthday.
Yeah. We were former bandmates, and now I think I talk to him once a year.
Nice.
That's what it's like to be an adult, folks.
Friendship.
Loss of innocence. Yeah, friendship. More like a friend sham. Am I right? Am I right? All right. Tell me I'm right. Otherwise, we're not friends.
Wrong.
All right, guys. Well, a few things to discuss here. First and foremost, should we do announcements now? Should we do plugs now, get them out of the way, or should we just wait till the end? You know, there's this thing about the Philosophy Club Radio Hour where we don't get to the topic until like 40 minutes into the program. Should we try to change that, or should we keep it like that? What do you think?
Let's get it out of the way. We could use a timestamp or something right after, you know?
Yeah, sure. And you know what else? We don't know if people will listen all the way to the end. We got to get our plugs in nice and early. That's what we'll do. We'll switch it up every episode. Our plugs will come in at a different time. And so today they're coming at the beginning,
Boy,
folks.
surprise plugs.
All right. Well, one thing I want to plug is, of course, as I was mentioning a moment ago, the new collaboration between the Philosophy Club and the Anthropology Club. Shout out to Philosophy Club President Cameron Morrow for designing these really beautiful flyers that you will see all throughout campus. Pictures of Philosophy Club meetings past, officer meetings past. Oh, you'll see upcoming events, the film series. Plug segue. The film series is back in full effect. Movies are TBD, but we do have the location, date, and time locked down. It's in the planetarium. You'll see them right here. Look for these flyers around campus, folks. Look for these flyers. They stand out, I think, in a really good way. A lot of flyers try to be, observable, noteworthy, notificational, in such a way where they will. Am I boring you, Kaylin? I'm sorry. In such a way where he's like, oh God, why did I agree to this? In such a way where they pop. So you have like bright green and bright blue and bright red. I like this because it's white and it's the font, it's the designs that pop. I think that's clever marketing. Yes, and of course you'll notice here what looks to be the evolutionary stage illustrated. That does bring us to our topic. Our first topic of the semester was evolutione. Right? That's basically what it was.
We're just skipping right through announcements then.
Yeah, we are. No, that was the only. Really, I just wanted to crowbar that announcement in. That in the film series. I guess you know what? Let's go around the board. If you have any sort of other clubs that you want to sort of promote, anything else like that, now's the time. We'll begin with me. I do want to promote. I did just come from an information session for a study abroad class I'm leading in Maymester 2020. I'm going to Western Europe. We've already got half the class filled. Get it? PHIL. And because it's a fill class. And
But not a full class.
not yet. We want to fill it up. Substitute pun here. Then, I just want to say this. These information sessions are super inspiring because, you won't get necessarily a lot of students, but the students that show up end up typically enrolling. If you're interested in studying philosophy in Western Europe, we're going to Germany, we're going to Italy, my motherland. We're going to, of all places, Switzerland, and then we're ending in Paris, France. I was in Paris about 3 weeks ago, doing basically going on a trial run of all that we have planned for the Paris portion, and I gotta say, it's pretty phenomenal. We're going to go see Versailles. We're going to do a lot of great stuff. It's going to be fantastic, and doing it while studying philosophy. Ethics and existentialism is the theme. So if you're interested in that, get at me. Let me know. And we could talk about how it works, how to enroll, itinerary, all that good stuff. Yes. Oh, I should probably say this. The Philosophy Club meets every Tuesday from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in room EO32. And then, of course, we broadcast live here every Thursday from 3 to 4, which ultimately gets uploaded to YouTube for a video podcast. Any other plugs? All right, cool. So
Sure do. So I'd be remiss if I did not plug an important event that's held every year here at Richland, coming up on Tuesday, September 17th at 11 a.m. in the Brazos Gallery. We are having our annual Constitution Day event. So it is the day in which we celebrate or remember the signing of the Constitution of the United States of America. And our very own Professor Patrick Moore has put together an event this year. There'll be a speaker. There's actually a video contest running right now that we should have more information on at the event. We'll be showcasing the winners. There'll be prizes handed out.
Nice.
It'll be great times. So that's 11 a.m. this Tuesday in the Brazos Gallery. Come there for Constitution Day.
Come get constituted.
Yes.
Speaking of that, I should plug this now because it's happening Wednesday, so before the next radio show. On Wednesday from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, I'm resuming my Phenomenology Workshop Series through the Learning Connections Workshop Series, hosted by the Learning Center. This one will be Phenomenology of Memory. Now, if you're familiar with my Phenomenology Workshop Series, which is no one, that's not true. They all max out. What happens is that I think they cap it at 12.
I think it's 13.
Is it 13? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Cut the mics for a second. Orlando, don't ever contradict me. It's bad radio. It makes it look like we have no hierarchical arrangements. Okay, turn on the mics again. Yes, I believe it's capped at 13, as I'm recalling. That was an exercise in memory. I'm joking, Orlando.
What did you
I know,
experience?
it's scary.
Exactly. So, real briefly, phenomenology is a philosophical approach to interpreting experience itself. More specifically, it tries to get at the essential features of what constitutes an experience. Last year, I did the 5 senses, and I ended with imagination. So these are not classes; these are workshops. So you show up, and I give you exercises or stimuli to sort of just have you experience. You experience them, then reflect upon your experiences. I am culling over all of those reflections and trying to get at, essential aspects of certain experiences. Again, it was the 5 senses, bodily experiences last year. This year, we're doing more cognitive stuff. We're doing memory, we're doing forgetting, and I think we're doing hoping for the last one. So yeah, just show up, and you get to participate in this study. I'm hoping to publish it. It should be very cool. So yeah, it's 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in Medina 216. And if you want to register, there's only one way to register. You have to go to the Learning Center website, click on, I think it's called Learning Connections Workshops. I think that's what the link is. Click on the link and find mine and just click register. If you don't see it, it's because it's already filled up. Filled up. All right. However, there is a waiting list, and if you show up and somebody doesn't, we'll plug you right in there. And if you're my students, you get extra credit for participation. How about that? All right, there are other announcements to be made. There are other events that are on the schedule for later on in the semester, and we'll bring those to your attention when we get closer to those dates. All right, without any further ado, shall we engage in this conversation? So, Orlando, help me out here. How would you describe the topic? Because it was kind of tough to even articulate. Because it was good, because it was, sophisticated.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first we should probably start by reiterating the question, and
Sure.
it was essentially, does evolution shape our mind, or do we shape evolution? I believe, or do we shape our own mind? I don't know. It was something along that line.
Yeah. No, and it was, it kind of became more ambiguous the more we talked about it, because we started making more and more distinctions. So if I remember correctly, it's something along the lines of, are we consciously seeking to evolve in such a way where we are using our rational capacities to further them, intentionally so, that might, create something like, and here's a buzzword, progress? Or is it more along the lines of evolution, we are evolving rather organically? And it's not necessarily that we're progressing, but maybe we're just deviating, we're just changing. Things are just different, not necessarily better. And I believe this idea of progress was kind of a bugaboo. People were getting hung up on it, and I'm glad. I think that's a good thing to get hung up on which to get hung. Don't end a sentence on a preposition, folks. And so I think the talking point for a little while was how do you determine progress?
Yeah, I think it was a good distinction that Professor Sullivan made in saying that progress isn't essentially the same thing as evolution, because evolution really is just adaptation to change. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that there is progress, but rather you're just adapting to any kind of change.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so with that being the case, that kind of asks the question, is there a better way to adapt, or is there a lesser way to adapt? And I think that's where we can bring in the idea of progress. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. I think that's good. Yeah. So essentially progress is something that's measured. So you need to have standards by which to measure whether something is or is not progressing. And I think Tim Sullivan was pointing out that that's not as cut and dried as it sounds.
Exactly.
And he was saying it depends almost on the perspective whether something could be considered progressive or not. Yeah. And I liked what you're getting at in terms of adaptability or adaptation. Great movie. The maybe Nicolas Cage's finest performance. I don't know. Snake Eyes was a horrible movie. I did love Leaving Las Vegas.
We all know Cage's finest movie is Face Off.
Oh my gosh.
Oh gosh, I forgot about Face Off.
I think I'm too young. I didn't know National Treasure. That's like
Oh yeah, National Treasure.
that's
I
like
forgot
the
about that
only
one too.
one I really like.
Yeah. Okay. So let's change topics slightly. What's your favorite Cage movie? Even? No. She's like, I hate them all.
Have Cage's movies progressed over time? Or
They've changed, but they have
Just
not
changed.
adapted.
Cage doesn't adapt.
I wish they all changed. Exactly. And yeah, he started an adaptation. I guess what I'm getting at is this, and I'm trying to sort of, again, this is the requack. Cue the requack.
Quack, quack.
Thank you. It was, how to put this? Somebody brought up teleology, and I can't remember. Yeah, and I'll say this: great turnout for the first meeting. I should have said
yeah.
I should have led with this instead of burying it 20 minutes in. We had like 35, 40 people there. It was incredible. You never know how it's going to be these first few weeks of classes because people are busy. They're still, finalizing their schedules. They're not really thinking about extracurricular stuff. They're worried about their curricular stuff. But I was really, really happy with the turnout. Really pleased with it. Especially because by the end there last semester, I think we were getting like 6 students a meeting.
I was surprised. I was like, oh, people actually came.
Yeah, me too. I was like, geez, people know Orlando's going to be here, and they still showed up.
Exactly.
I
Obviously, they came for me.
probably. Let me show the audience something real quick here.
Don't worry, dead air is fine.
That's why y'all are here.
Is it?
Somebody's got to.
I thought philosophy's all about why we're here. Yeah, and we just figured it out. Congratulations.
Yeah.
To fill
Here to serve
we're-
my interests.
We're here to fill dead air.
Phil, death. There's a connection there.
Yeah.
This is how you sign in to the philosophy club or in the anthropology club. It's a. I always want to say QVC. It's
QR.
It's a QR code.
Yeah.
So that's how you do it. We're really technologically advanced here, folks. I bring this up for the following reason.
As evidenced by the crumpled up sheet of paper.
Exactly. You should see the inside of my bag. Papa's got a brand new bag and it stinks. Seriously, I basically bought a purse, and I only say that because there's nothing to. It's just one giant hole, and anyways, it's causing papers to get crumpled. At any rate, just be aware when you show up, look for those things to sign in because we want to get a running count of our membership here. OSL is demanding it, so let's make sure we go ahead and do that. At any rate, yes, we're talking about teleology. So. And it kills me. I can't remember the name of the student member who brought this up. But long story short, theology, from the term telos and logos, etymologically speaking, logos is the study of, and a telos is an aim or a goal or sort of a natural end. And so his idea was that, and you were engaging him on this, Orlando, which is why I'm talking about it. But it's this idea that, look, if you are of a certain nature, if you are a certain thing, and we can define what that is, human organism, for example, then you could say, that certain thing needs to have certain values, needs to perform certain activities in order for it to thrive based upon what it is. So there's a natural teleological end to maybe human activities. And if you deviate from that natural end, then you're destined to, at the very least, be unhappy because you're living in such a way that, again, defies the very conditions of your existence. If you have a teleology, then you can have a basis for progress. The standard of progress is going to be, again, your nature, human nature itself, as defined by a certain teleological end. Then it would seem like, if these are the conditions that are required, again, the requisite conditions for your thriving, for your happiness, then you could chart your progress or your regress, depending on how close you are to reaching this aim of, again, in the more traditional sense, rational faculty fulfillment, we could say.
So just based off what you were saying there, I think it's kind of interesting because if we're looking back at the question of is evolution shaping us or are we shaping it?
Yeah.
I think to this extent, we have gotten so far so comfortable within our stage in evolution that now we're starting to shape it. Because now we can actually talk about teleology.
Right.
When before
it
was more about just surviving, like, oh, what am I going to eat today? Like, am I going to be safe? Am I going to have fire? You know what I mean? And so, like, our
I have
problems,
classes next semester. Yeah.
our problems changed from something of a physical nature into a moral nature now, or an ethical nature.
Yes, and that would seem to suggest that, in fact, we are at least maturing rationally.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think this was Tim's point. That begs the question, is maturing rationally necessarily progress? And you can say yes if you believe, that's what a human being is, I use this carefully, designed to do or built for. But if you don't believe that, then you can sort of take umbrage with that and say, no. If I believe that, human beings aren't necessarily meant to live a particular kind of life, then you no longer have a standard by which to judge or evaluate your progress. You'd have to reevaluate. But to your point, Orlando, the very fact that we can have these questions maybe strongly suggests that we've, again, changed in a way that is for the better.
So
An improvement.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily the case, though. Because what if there is no...
What I say about disagreeing?
What if there is no bridge between the moral abstract and physical nature? What if we're kind of just
Interesting.
constructing this, you know? So, like, let's say, okay, well, right now in this moment in time, we've kind of gotten to the stage where the Earth is more stable, where where things are kind of more comfortable with us for us to have these kinds of thoughts. But then what if later on there's, like, let's just say an asteroid hits us or something else where it kind of drives us to think differently.
Melancholia, the movie.
And so with that being the case,
Or film.
our moral nature is not going to be a product of ourselves, but rather of our surroundings.
Can you elaborate on that?
So in that case, it's circumstantial is what I'm saying. The morality is that because right now,
okay.
because everything, I guess you could say in the world in terms of just the environment, it's a little bit more peaceful, we have the ability to ask, okay, well, what do I really think is right and what is wrong? When maybe something that is a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more dangerous, we're going to have to actually unite and say, okay, well, we need to do these things in order to survive.
Yeah, okay, that's right. And that reminds me of kind of the tail ends where the rubber is really hitting the concrete on Tuesday. And I think what it came down to, maybe not ultimately what it came down to, but one of the things we were batting around of a piece with that was this idea of the value of life itself. Because this whole notion of evolution, and people talked about natural selection and survival of the fittest and all that stuff, it all implies that life is valuable. Now, I'm not saying it is or it isn't one way or the other, but it does seem to suggest that if you, that was my first faux pas, where I swallowed audibly into the microphone. There'll be many more of those, folks. Many more of those. There's one. At any rate, is the idea that I keep cutting off myself. How's that even possible? Is the idea that
Next topic.
can you interrupt the self? Is this notion that, well, the value of life seems to be the maybe overlooked or presupposition that people began to look to when they consider evolution. And so to your point, it's like, now we have the luxury to consider right and wrong. Maybe back in the day, we didn't have such a luxury. We were considering what was safe and unsafe, what was harmful or at the very least pleasurable or satisfying. But then I think the argument becomes, well, those initial impressions they germinate, they progress, or they manifest into our notions of right and wrong. So right and wrong becomes tied to avoiding death, prolonging life. And these natural impulses become our moral compass.
So let me just ask you a question then, because I kind of like what you were saying there. So what would you say is the priority?
We're not getting you in the headphones.
Yeah,
for some
we
reason.
just lost you for a second.
Hello,
There you go.
Okay, what is the priority? Oh my God, what should be the priority for a human life?
I'm secretly telling Jack to cut his mic.
Flourishing or surviving?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what you're getting. You're getting at a really good point here. Is that at a certain point, I did it again. Mere survival is. Wait till I start eating in here. Just joking, Jack. It sound like that. Orlando's eating. No. Yeah, you have to go from mere survival to something like actually, as you say, flourishing, thriving. And you could say, well, that's the end result of something like natural selection, where we've gotten to the point where those who are capable of going beyond merely surviving are able to pursue something like true happiness. But where those overlaps lie are very fascinating.
But is it possible that time has allowed it to be that way? Because let's look at something like the dinosaurs. At the time, they could have been flourishing, but yet when time came around and there was a huge disaster, they were not able to adapt.
Yeah.
So in that case, that kind of would have been a priority of survival over flourishing. Wouldn't you agree?
I love that leading conclusion. When did you say I'm correct? Well, first of all, everybody knows dinosaurs don't exist. We've been around for 2,000 years.
They were made up.
Exactly.
They're just rocks.
They're just rocks.
Photoshops.
Photoshop fossils. Philosophy. There's something there. I'm sorry. Repeat your question.
Oh, I forgot.
Yes, it worked. Okay.
Why would survival and flourishing be mutually exclusive?
Damn you, Scoggins. Yeah. Okay. So why would they be mutually exclusive? And again, I think the exclusivity is not necessarily one of it's not a dichotomy. It's just that if you're focusing on survival historically, I suppose this is your point. That becomes itself the definition of thriving. Thriving is surviving. And thanks to time, I think this is what your point is, thanks to time elapsing and us sort of solidifying in terms of our, communal aspects, forming societies, what have you, that's allowed us to begin to make distinctions and say, well, if survival is no longer, something really challenging, we know how to survive. Well, what comes next? And suddenly we could say, well, now thriving is different from merely surviving. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah.
What did you say that?
No, I am saying that. I have. I did say that definitely, but Also, I just want to look at this kind of in a scope of time, because I feel like for humanity, we have yet to realize like how short of a time period we actually have been here, especially in comparison to like how many organisms that have existed throughout time.
It's blasphemy, but okay.
And when we're like the example of the dinosaurs that I used is that they flourished at one moment, and at that moment you could have said, okay, well, flourishing in that sense kind of coexisted with surviving. But when a disaster came and the asteroid basically, destroyed or killed, it caused them to be extinct, they at that point should have prioritized surviving. Not that they were conscious or anything, but you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, because that would be the rational thing.
Yeah.
And not to say the dinosaurs are rational. What a fun cartoon show that could be.
So are you arguing here that that flourishing basically can come at the expense of survival?
To an extent that we don't understand what we have to survive against.
Maybe.
Okay, I thought you were saying, at certain points, so we can talk about...
No, I was saying what you kind of... Yeah, I was saying that, but then I kind of expound
Yeah.
on that. Yeah.
No, and so I love the points. And to Kaylin's kind of question here, so it seems like there are certain circumstances that will dictate the standards by which we judge thriving. So if we enter into World War III right now or something like that, heaven forbid, and we enter into a real anarchical sort of situation, then again, an example of our evolutionary mature state would, interestingly enough, be to decide to stop quibbling over thriving and just worry about surviving.
Yeah.
And so the circumstances dictate the standards by which you evaluate what it is to thrive. Because if certain circumstances are demolished, the conditions for your sort of leisurely thriving are no longer there. Thriving therefore gets reduced to something like surviving. Would that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Orlando forgets that I'm actually smart because I make so many dumb jokes in class. So yeah, but I'm glad we have Eva here. I'm glad we have an art student here because I kind of wanted to ask this question. I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm just saying you won't be welcome back if you don't respond. I'm joking. Is it possible? Because I really don't know. Is it possible to look at progress in the art world? Like if you're looking kind of historically what art has been, would you call that progressing, like getting better and better and better at arts? Or is it just different? Is it just deviations and experimentations?
Yeah. So coincidentally, I was thinking about this yesterday. I was thinking about European art,
Yeah.
being at contemporary then to now.
Yeah.
Specifically, the details of the painting. It's not. I think more so. It's becoming more contemporary. It's becoming less realistic.
Interesting.
For myself, I think progression in terms of artistic style it's in a different category.
I think I see what you're saying.
I think we are progressing. We're looking differently. We're trying to take apart the details of the paint.
Right.
And we're expanding it. So we're expanding the colors. We're expanding the fragments of the eye, and
That's pretty cool.
It's being flipped, but it's very contemporary. It's very vast.
Okay. So, I mean, to me, that sounds like...
It's different.
No, that was really clear. That sounds like innovation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is innovation the same thing as progress, necessarily?
And if you say there's progress in art, does that mean that there's a kind of telos or standard for art?
Yeah, exactly. Like, is all of art aiming at one particular thing, or because I agree with you say about techniques. It's like you can make progress in your style, in your technique. You can get better at something or worse at something because there's a standard. You're like, I'm trying to be able to paint like the Impressionists or something like that, and so you have that standard. And you judge your work, your technique by how well you can mimic them. I think that's what art school is essentially, and which is great. But that's, as you said, that's something a little different than, say, generally speaking, what art is. And art seems to be, as you said, focused in on the vast amount of ways in which you can give expression to something, especially as you work with the materials, with the medium.
I think the progression of political art has evolved, where we are now pinpointing the art that we want now.
Okay.
Unlike, back in 1940s, we really, or even 1800s, we really loved the realism and the quality of, the structure, the behavior, the anthropology inside of art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does that mean that there is no standard for art in general, but only for the individual artist? There's a standard of the artist, but not maybe of just art as such.
The standard of art, in my perspective, is changing as in time. So, it's when we're going to survival versus flourishing, and we're flourishing in a way that it's not easier to be an artist and paint contemporary, but it's easier to look at art as in like a contemporary idea of what was it? What am I trying to say? It's
It's tough
I guess-
stuff.
Yeah, it's of conflict and
Excuse you, Orlando.
I don't know. I need to think about that.
Well, I think I see where you're pointing at. Not to presume I know what you're going to say, but it's like this idea of wrestling with the conceptuality of arts. It seems like perhaps because I like to your point, Kaylin. I think it's a really interesting one to consider. See that right there? That makes me nervous. How come nothing's moving? That freaks me out. At any rate, oh yeah. So I just had another thought we could do. Should we? Never mind.
Philosophy, staying
So
on
this is
topic.
interrupting yourself twice now in the same sentence.
I think I'm schizophrenic is the conclusion. So Kaylin's point is that, well, what if, and I like this because it almost smacks of an existentialist flavor, that what if the artist is the author of her own standards? And so he or she decides for herself and is free to revise the standards by which she judges her work.
I think the competition is what holds us, through the evolving.
That's
arts.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like a progression in aesthetics, you could say.
Yeah. Especially because, it's a great point because, again, you can't be we've actually had this conversation, I believe, on this radio show at one point. But you can't be an artist and live in a vacuum or live in isolation. Art is expression, which presumes that there's an audience of some sort, and sometimes the audience is other artists.
So if art is relative to the competition in general, are you kind of hinting at a kind of almost natural selection at play?
Whoa,
Yes.
look at that.
Within
Beautiful.
art, just as there is, within the biological realm, there's also similar, I guess, pressures at work in the competition. I don't know, what's the equivalent of survival or flourishing in the art world? What does it mean to survive as an artist? Apart from the obvious of, the artists themselves survive. What does it mean for your art to survive?
Yeah, not the starving artist.
Right.
But yeah, the art.
I would say, the value of what art can go. The value, the money, the profit, the belief that we can always change art.
Oh, okay. There it is. Change.
Change.
Deviation, adaptability.
Yeah.
Would you say that artists have to adapt to the competition or the?
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
Definitely.
It's-
And I think that's what's hard because people have their own ideas. So, like I said, we have a pick and choose world. So if we have our own ideas, we have to somewhat adapt to what's now.
Yeah, it's so. I mean, this is remarkable to me because this is similar to the conclusion that we kind of arrived at in the philosophy club. Not that we ever arrive at real conclusions. That's why there's a radio show. But yeah, this term came up. I can't remember who brought it up. Some genius, I think it was Manzi, brought up symbiosis. Symbiosis. It's the sequel to The Lion King. Symbiosis. No. Thank you, Eva. Kaylin, if you're gonna chuckle, please do it into the microphone.
No.
So to say something symbiotic, it means like it's mutually reinforcing. So I feel like artists, part of their job is to shape the perception among the general public of what is artistic. And yet, as you're saying, artists also themselves have to adapt to the expectations that the public has of what they want. And so the artists are shaping expectations as well as sort of adapting to expectations simultaneously.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of what we discussed in terms of evolution. It's not that the environment is determining us or that we are completely mastering the environment, but it's a mutually
It's a give or take.
it's a
Yeah.
give and take. So our environment compels us to adapt in ways that allow us to thrive within it. And then, of course, circumstances might from our own design, maybe we make decisions that change the environment in such a way where now we have to adapt to it, and it in turn adapts to our machinations, and round we go. Which is why you can argue perhaps it's difficult to predict what the next evolutionary phase or stage might be, and that ambiguity is kind of, I think it goes to the point that you can't really chart progress almost until retrospectively, unless you believe in a teleology.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I think our next species AI. So
Oh yeah, I forgot. It went in that direction too. Artificial intelligence. Did we decide on the next topic? Oh, yeah, let's. Okay, we're gonna.
that should be the next topic. But
Well, here's the thing. I'm introducing a segment to the radio show. It's called Group Me's. And so what I'm going to do is just read. I'm just going to dive into the Group Me of the Philosophy
No,
Anthropology
don't do
Club
it.
and just read a few lines.
Don't do it.
We'll pick different characters. Kaylin, you could be Orlando.
No, let's not.
Orlando's laughing now, but he's like, no, seriously.
No.
You don't want to see how the philosophical sausage gets made.
It's
The next
terrible.
topic is privacy.
Exactly. I have a right to privacy, sir.
I am. Listen, I haven't. I got to go back and. I got to go back and not anymore. We are talking about rights in my class. I haven't got a chance to look closely, but it did look like there was a real kind of debate going on between what the next topic should be and kind of where to take it and stuff like that, which I love to see because it shows me how much you guys care about this stuff and you're taking it super seriously. I love that. It's good to have a little back and forth like that. It really is. Because there have been, philosophy club regimes in the past where it was more or less a dictatorship, a willing one. Not me. I wasn't the dictator. I was just the dictatorship. Okay. Jack, we cut that out. I fear for my job. The idea is that, you'd have one person kind of saying, yeah, well, let's all do this. And everybody just was like, okay. And then they would do it. It would go well, but there wasn't any real kind of back and forth.
Yeah.
You guys are having a real back and forth. I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
As long as you keep it respectful. And by that, just understand that I get final cut.
So you're saying they're
Okay.
adapting to change in real time and shaping how the club is evolving?
Yes, but what they've forgotten is the standard, which is,
Manzi.
where I come in. Exactly.
The secret hand.
Manzi is the invisible hand.
There you go.
Hands mans.
The octopus.
Hands mans.
Manzi Manzi.
The tentacles are wrapping over everything. What time is it? 3. Okay, we got 15 minutes. Awesome. It's interesting. This conversation kind of turned into a conversation about progress itself, as opposed to say, actually evolution in particular. But I think, that's the sign of a good conversation. It goes in ways that are perhaps unanticipated, but certainly related. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Maybe.
I was totally paying attention.
Right? Just like class. But I do want to return to something that came up earlier. I didn't want to kind of gloss over it. But again, only tangentially related, but nonetheless, I think something worth chewing. Prepositions. That's this notion of, again, going back to art and going back to what it is to sort of just come up with the whole concept of what progress is. Do you think it's and I brought this up in the club and got some interesting responses, but do you think it's possible for humans to get to a point where we are completely evolved? Because if there is a telos, there is a natural aim or end to things, then presumably, at least hypothetically, you have to entertain the possibility of reaching that point.
I think in stating that, you're kind of implying that change will stall. And so then the question is it ever possible for things to never change?
Yeah, and another way to put it would be, is it possible to reach perfection? Because
Well,
you wouldn't want things to change if they're perfect.
Well,
If we're perfectly evolved.
The answer that I gave was to say that we would essentially have to become God.
I think that's right.
Yeah, and because there's no other way. You could say that we could master our own little environment, our own domain, but we'd still have to worry about external factors. I mentioned like black holes. So that'd still be something to deal with. Are we ever going to master the universe, essentially?
Yeah, and that was that was of a piece with the whole rise of modern science, trying to master the physical environment for the sake of our own benefit. We were kind of kicking around too. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back and I'm going to listen. I keep doing that. That's going to be my job. I'm going to go back. I'm going to listen to this when it's on YouTube. I'm going to record with my phone things that we say, and I'm going to segment them, and then I'm just going to play them over the microphone. And I'm going to cut where you say, we all have to become gods.
Oh, wow.
That's gonna be the Orlando drop.
I'm gonna go back to that
Where
dictatorship
every,
part.
every time you make an awesome point, I'm gonna play like, that's why we have to become gods. I'm working on one for you, Kalen.
Oh boy, there it was.
Kalen's here with his enthusiasm. Oh boy.
I'll be the mic drop.
There you go. Oh, geez. But yeah, I think getting back to that point in the conversation, I think that's when it was getting really fruitful, is entertaining that very idea. Because here's the other side of it, folks. If you want to go down the path of modern science, beginning in the 1600s with somebody like Descartes, it's, again, the attempt to understand the laws of the physical universe. Again, nature is physis. That's the Greek word for it. Physics, where we get the word physics from, is the physical laws. We learn those physical laws for the sake of being able to master our circumstances, to conquer our environment. Again, we learn about, we figure out why the body decays so that we can now keep it from decaying. We learn why the heart stops beating so we can keep it beating in perpetuity. This striving towards immortality was kind of, I feel, and to this day, I think it continues, and I said as much at the meeting, it's the impetus, it's the catalyst for the rise in science. So the idea that, science and evolution are sort of intertwined, I think, at least in terms of most people's minds, the general public, they think evolution, they think science. I think it's very telling, because, or perhaps foretelling, because it seems precedented on the idea that we can, on some level, affect something of I don't want to say utopia, but we'll be able to really significantly enhance our quality of life, our living situation, to such a strong degree that perhaps one day it'll remain fixed. So we'll avoid problems. The need to adapt will no longer be there.
So since we're kind of going far out here, I kind of want to ask then.
Yeah, it is far out.
It's
Thank you
pretty
for pointing
far
that
out.
out. Yeah, it's totally hypothetical.
Since we're
Yeah.
going that route, then I think it's important to kind of point out, well, what about the Platonic point of view, where are we not going to consider what lays in the mind, the power of the mind?
Sure.
Is there another school of thought that's more real than science? Is that a possibility that we just have lacked the comprehension of understanding it?
Okay, so you talk about the limitations of what we can know. Interesting.
Because essentially we only look at the physical reality as of the understanding of what is real, but what if there is something more than that? Obviously it is kind of silly, but speaking of other dimensions almost.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if
I don't think
science
that's
is
silly. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Well, I mean, if science is laid out by definition from the beginning as the study of the physical, universe, the physical world, or physical properties, whatever, then kind of by definition, if there is anything, besides or beyond the physical, it's kind of beyond the bounds of science by its own definition.
Mm-hmm.
Science isn't saying that, or by that definition of science, you're not saying that nothing beyond the physical exists, only that for the purpose of what we're calling science, we're just not really caring whether it does or not. We're kind of bracketing or setting aside that question for the purpose precisely of focusing on the physical laws for the purpose of our mutual benefit.
Yeah.
Well, if that is the case, that's what I'm saying, is that if we're able to master that, then would then we kind of come about these other kinds of schools of thoughts? Would we then kind of start to see, okay, well, now that we understand this, we see this?
Okay, so you're thinking of a time when, like, okay, well, we've finished science. Good job, everyone. What now?
Maybe.
Essentially.
Maybe we're afraid of opening up our minds to that to
Yeah.
the exclusivity that those other dimensions. We don't want to open
Because
up our minds.
Yeah,
Pandora's
yeah.
box. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what if? But also, humans are curious by nature. Like I feel like there isn't. In my
You always
opinion-
come back to that.
Sure, that sounds teleological.
Exactly. It is.
Oh no. Let's not. Okay, cut that out. What time is it? 4? Okay.
Oh, okay, bye.
Oh, well, that's been all our time.
No, but again, I do like the points you're making here. I think they're very intelligent ones. See, that's what I like to say before I lay into them. I'm joking. And then later I say, but nonetheless, good observations. It's called a compliment sandwich. I'm hungry.
Subway is right there.
What's the policy? Is the policy still no eating in the studio, Jack?
You ready for an answer?
You assume he's listening.
Say, no, I'm actually hoping he isn't. If it's if we can eat in here, say nothing. Great. Fantastic. Anyhow, now we're eating food for thought. That's what we're eating here. So yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, if you want to consider stuff like, the limitations of reason or the limitations of science, again, to Kalen's point, science replaces truth with proof, with physical evidence or verification, which means you have to be able to measure things, and it's tough to measure that which isn't physical. And so that's why you could say, well, science is on some level limited, potentially. And specifically in the ways even that you're talking about. In Orlando, different like possible dimensions and stuff like that, or maybe things that require what's that word? I never say it. Faith?
The very interesting thing is though that even science kind of points that out. Is that it points it out the
Totally.
possibility of different dimensions and these essentially this nature of the physical world that we just don't understand.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. And I think that's why science, I guess I kind of agree with you and disagree in saying that science maybe isn't limited. Maybe it's just in its elementary stage.
Oh, fascinating. So science has to evolve.
Oh, there you go. Look at that.
Well, but I think that's what I think science and art are very similar in this way. At least good science, what allows me to say that, is it good or bad science? In the sense that there's an artistry to both of them. There's a creativity to both of them, a symbiosis to both of them. So science will put out things hypothetically, and then sometimes, its hypotheses are verified and, demonstrated endlessly if you set up the conditions in a lab. But oftentimes, they discover things that they weren't anticipating. And that in turn causes them to adapt to the things that they've seemingly actually discovered. So you do have like a discovery of some sort. And as a result, sometimes that affects what's called a paradigm shift. Where again, maybe the whole notion of reality will change, or maybe a notion of what you think a black hole is will change, and that has implications for how we understand the galaxy's birth to have been. And then science again adapts to that, and then it changes people's perspective or people's perceptions or expectations of what reality is. Because when you want to know what reality is, you consult the experts, scientists. It's like that again with art.
Leonardo da Vinci.
Yeah, okay, there you go. I mean, this might sound weird, but who are the expert artists? The ones who are the most famous? The ones who are the most skilled, but not necessarily the most famous? The ones who sell the most paintings, make the most money? Or is it the art critics? Are the art critics supposed to be the experts?
I think it's the audience.
Oh, nice.
I think it's
I knew I was
what
an
we
expert.
like. It's what we want to.
I love that
Active.
response. I think so because again, but that's an interesting standard. Because it's not about knowledge per se; it's about the degree to which people resonate with your work.
When Leonardo da Vinci, did the human body, people opened up their minds and wow.
Yeah.
And then that evolved with people doing more of the human body and experimenting.
Totally, like an inspiration.
Yeah.
Art could be an inspiration for science and vice versa.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize this. Descartes' whole approach to things began with a dream. He had a crazy, vivid dream that he took very seriously.
Same thing I actually believe is true of the molecular structure of benzene.
Really?
Yeah, there's a story that the scientist who discovered the molecular structure of benzene was like sitting on a park bench, and he went into like this weird kind of, he described it as a trance, where he just saw the image of the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, until it like crystallized into like a ring of light, and he saw like the details around it, and he's like, he couldn't explain how he knew. He's like, that's what benzene is structured like, and it turns out he was correct.
Wow.
That's wild.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how he tells the story. It's completely out there, but that's supposedly at least the story of how this guy discovered the structure of benzene.
Maybe it's well.
He got the bends.
Maybe it's our imagination. Maybe it's our imagination shifting to another dimension.
Maybe.
That, yeah.
Yeah, that is the question that
theoretical.
comes up with that kind of stuff. Like, is it just coincidence? I mean, it could be.
Yeah.
It seems kind of
See,
crazy. Or is it
that's
like him?
science.
Or is he getting information from somewhere else
Yeah,
that we don't
right?
know about?
Interesting conversation.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, I think we can say adaptation requires imagination.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that was the question. People were saying, well, no, maybe it's just organic. It's natural. You just naturally evolve or adapt to the circumstances. And it doesn't really take it just will happen. But it seems like maybe we think otherwise.
So, I mean, even non-sentient or non-conscious things adapt to change.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's the other side of it, too, is that,
Yeah, good point. Wow.
Yeah, excellent. I think that's going to be your drop. The chemical compound of benzene. What did you say?
It's the molecular
The
structure.
molecular structure.
of benzene.
Speaking, yeah, it's great that I'm teaching phenomenology of memory. I didn't remember what you said 5 seconds ago. That might have been
What
because
was that like?
Well, as you were talking, I literally hit myself in the nose with the microphone. So I think that was a little distracting for me and embarrassing.
Are you going to do phenomenology of distraction?
That's a good idea.
You're welcome.
Who said that?
Manzi.
I'm hearing voices in the other room, which means I think the next radio show is coming in. That would be Adrian. I don't think that's the name of the program, but that's probably the hostess. So before we kind of wrap up here, any sort of final thoughts? Any final thoughts? Want to go around the room? Thoughts on evolution? Thoughts on art? Thoughts on progress? Thoughts on Manzi? Anything? Anything important?
Nothing is real.
Israel?
Really?
No, that's just my final thought, guys. Don't
Is it
mess
re-
with
is
it.
it
That's
really?
mine.
Is it really?
Really though? Yeah, Eva, what do you think? Thoughts on again adaptation? Again, especially kind of in the art worlds, because it really seems as though well, here's the other side of it. The more you learn about something, I think the more clear its trajectory becomes. You see the sort of rationality behind it, and so the closer you look at something, and here's just one theory: the less random it seems, and the more again, almost purposive it seems.
I think we're just shifting.
I think so. Okay, yeah, and so that's the other side of it. It's not necessarily progress. It's a change in what we value relative to art or science and the questions that pique our interest and drive us. If they go beyond needs, then yeah, it seems like there might be some sort of arbitrariness involved there.
I think we need to look more into dimensional imagination.
Okay. Yeah. How would we do that? I don't know. I was gonna say,
I think we're
Pop up
incapable, possibly.
yeah.
Maybe we aren't. Maybe we're just closing our minds to it.
You need to meditate more. No, sorry.
Yeah.
Orlando, you're so positive. You said so many just negative statements. Not negative, but just
Ouch.
like, no, not negative. But like so many drops I have in mind where you're just like, maybe we can't know. Maybe there's nothing to know. Maybe reason's limited. Just like, geez, okay. Professor Scoggins, final thoughts.
I think a good takeaway is that if nothing else, you can't have progress without some kind of there's no progress without some kind of standard. And even if you're going to talk about change, you can't really even identify or pick out something as change without something that's not changing, some kind of unchanging standard. So seems that standards are unavoidable.
Yes, yeah. And so what's so interesting is that, again, as Orlando was saying, sometimes the standards are very obvious in terms of survival, but if you've gone on beyond mere survival to something like flourishing, then it seems like the standards are up to you or up to the people. You decide what you think is a worthy standard for something like arts or something like beauty, whatever the case may be. Are those the same? Probably. Tune in next week. So yeah, it's there has to be standards, but the source of those standards perhaps is varied. Depending on historical circumstances. That's the 19th time I've smacked my lips into this godforsaken microphone. It's good to be home, folks. It's good to be home. And so we're going to wrap up real quick here. But before I do, shout out. Yesterday was the 18th anniversary. Shout out's a weird way to put it. It was the 18th anniversary of September 11th, and hopefully you kind of remember that. Keep that in your thoughts. I shared this image with a few of my colleagues and friends and students. It's a little picture of me when I was on Liberty Islands, where the Statue of Liberty resides. There's a picture of me with the Twin Towers in the background. Where is the group me? Oh, here it is. Okay, here we go. And so, just a little shout out. I mean, as it's becoming 17, 18 years later, and the average age of the college student, at least originally, is sort of lowering. More and more students kind of just understand it almost from a distance. Theoretically, don't really have any sort of tangible memories of it. And so it's good to remind people that are in your life that some people actually did witness this, even if it were only witnessing it from afar. That's a lot of buildup. I can't find the picture, folks. Okay, here we go. I got it. Sorry, folks. I lied. I thought I had it. Well, that was an anticlimactic way to end the show. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Yes. Look at me.
Little Manzi.
Little Manzi.
Amazing.
Sideways hat, purple jacket. Who was cooler? Who was cooler? All right. Real quick. So I guess next week's topic, TBD. The battle rages on in the group me.
No, no.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you to my guests for coming. I think this was a fun season 7 premiere. We got the ball rolling. We kind of shot the breeze a little bit. That's what we're all about here, folks. And you know, shout out to Tim Sullivan. Shout out to the Anthropology Club student officers, a few of whom maybe will come on at some point. Esther and who's the VP?
Jack.
And Jack. Great people.
Yeah.
Shout out to especially the officers, student officers who really ran the show for the Office of Student Life Club Fair that happened last week. It's kind of like recruitment week. And y'all just really held it down. Orlando, huge shout outs to you. Shout out to, again, John Floyd, who also pitched in. And yeah, to everybody who's involved. Fantastic job. We filled up 4 pieces of paper worth of student interest and email addresses and contact information. Probably why we had so many people on Tuesday. So big props.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And so last but not least, you are listening to KDUX Web Radio, broadcast live from Richland College in Dallas, Texas. We are the voice of Richland College. Views expressed on this show are Kalen's own, unless otherwise stated, and do not reflect the opinion of KDUX Web Radio, Richland College, or the DUCD. What's my sign off?
I forgot it.
You can't remember? Maybe you should think about it.
Oh! Nice. That was good.
Well done, everyone.
Is that the end or no? Oh, he's trying to do that.
I've gone to another dimension.
I thought you were trying to do that thing.
Taking Eva's advice. All right, that'll do it, folks.